Take go. There we go.
Chiquita, ba da 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 ba ba da. Chicken body why da da da. I feel social and contagion. Here we are now. Social contagion. Yeah.
Wow! Wow!
Uh, Hello, ladies and gentlemen, one and all, to Nobody Asked. Ah!
I would say the same.
Yes, I am your musical narrator that isn't Colin. And today we are joined by Lumberjack Maria.
Well, hello, that's me.
Yes, it is. And also Colin. Hello, that is me. Yes, 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 that's what's going on. And today we're talking about social contagion. Take it away, Colin. Well, thank you, narrator. That was seamless.
Ha!
Yeah, today we're talking about social contagion. What is the phenomenon? What is it related to? How do you determine if a seemingly new behavior in the young people is social contagion or just people realizing something about themselves? I don't know.
What?
We'll talk about it.
What?
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 Social contagion.
Is it a trend? Obviously.
It's a virus, and it must be taken out.
It's spreading.
With mass spreading through the youth, through their words.
All of them, everywhere. And stop talking about it. Be quiet. Don't infect my children with your evil liberal ideas. Oh, sorry.
All right. Liberal, yes. So it's going to be a great episode, but it's a pretty intense topic. So we've got a special guest loaded and in the chamber for you. So don't click away, ladies and gentlemen. This one's going to be a banger. So, you know. I got a soundboard. Can you tell? And and it's going really, really well. So hello to Barbie, Wendy H, Patricia with a C, and Ashley Nicole. We're always glad to have you around. But first, Mom, what's going on in your life?
Well, this Sunday, me and your dad, we walk the bridge. We come back home, and there's fire trucks in the neighborhood. And we're like, hey, man, is there anything to be concerned about? What's going on? They're like, well, yeah, man, the forest is basically on fire. And we're like, what? Yeah, some guy kind of, maybe he was burning tires. It's hard to say. Maybe he was doing other nefarious things. I mean, burning tires is pretty dumb, just right off the bat. So, we were like, oh, geez. So, we were kind of watching the smoke, watching it. We ended up with firemen parked in our driveway, hosing stuff down. I have some videos if you'd like to see just how close it got.
You have them up to put on the stream?
I do. So
that's what's up.
Okay, so I got two. This is the. I'm sorry that was so loud. That's how loud that fire
Yeah,
truck was.
that is right in your backyard. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, it was. I got
and
one more
okay, okay,
that's worth showing. It's worth showing because it's a little bit funnier. Okay, so hold on.
okay.
To be clear, I'm like
Just
standing on
wait.
top of the RV. Hi, Mama.
That made me laugh because my mother followed the smoke. And she was like, I think it's near Maria's house, right? So she just keeps driving, driving, driving. And Vic's like, hey, do you want to go there? And she's like, well, yeah, I want to go there. And she goes there, and there's a fire truck in our driveway. I'm standing on top of the RV. And she's like, what's happening? So it just made me laugh that I turn and I see her on the porch, you know.
That's crazy. And so it looks like it was both behind and like to the east of your property. So
Yeah.
it had kind of gone around, but it doesn't
Yeah.
touch any of your trees somehow.
It doesn't. It just missed it. It just
This is the
like the
second
wind.
time in our lives that a fire has gone on two sides of our property and not
Yep.
actually touched our property.
Yep. Yep. I mean, but in Utah, it's
Crazy.
less surprising. In Mississippi, you don't expect it. You really don't.
It's so wet.
And the wind picked up and yeah, just sort of ran right towards the neighbor's house. And it got, I mean, it was very, very close to their house. It went right to the edge of where
Yeah.
theirs is at. And they did evacuate because they have two little babies and stuff. So they kind of freaked out. But yeah, then they took this big trenching machine, like a I don't know. It was like a bobcat, but like the front of it had like a scoop on it, it was pointy, and it just sort of cut. It just sort of moved the trees away, and then it had like a tiller thing on the back that just dug a big trench as it went around. And so then they just sort of left the fire after that. They were like, okay, it's not going to go to your house now. We've built a trench.
All right.
It'll burn itself out, and it did. It was still smoking yesterday. So that was 3 days later. It was still smoking because the
Yep.
undergrowth is so dense and thick that just something underneath would catch, would and it would just smolder. But it never actually came into our yard, thankfully. So, but I just think it's important at all costs to try to avoid doing meth. I just think it's important because this dude, I guess he was in the ER with second-degree burns. He didn't take himself there. The police took him there. He started trying to grab the fireman's hoses and trying to put the fire out himself. He ran back into the fire like a fool, and then he was in the ER acting a fool too. He was just carrying on, and your aunt was there at the time, and she said he eloped. So he noped out of there is what that means. He didn't seem to care that he had second-degree burns for a fire that he started. He doesn't even live over here. That was the other part. He doesn't live here.
He doesn't live there?
I guess he
Wait,
was
what? He was
friends.
just in the forest?
He was friends
Oh.
with somebody. I don't know. And they thought, let's.
So how does
something.
that somebody feel now? I mean, have you guys talked? Because my impression is that everybody knows, you guys, because Dad's walking circles around the neighborhood. So
Yeah.
what's the vibe there?
I mean, there's definitely some judgment from people.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because they were like, they knew exactly who it was. They go, oh, it was this guy. They said his name, and then it was even in the news. There was like a little report that this guy got arrested for a brush fire. Is what it said. But yeah, it moved quick when the wind picked up because it was kind of stagnant, kind of where the yellow house is on the next street over. It was behind their house for a while. And it was definitely on fire, but it was kind of staying right there. And then the wind kicked up and it just went, and yeah. So a little scary.
Crazy. Well, when I heard about that, this is how I felt. I'm having fun. Yeah, well, I'll just go briefly. We also had a fire in our lives, but it was a little different. So, as you know, me and my girlfriend live in New York City, which has been the valley of death lately. And I have this video of that was taken. Uh, Ellie and I went to Philly for a few days, had a great time. And this video was taken on the George Washington Bridge while we were on the bridge, but it's on Reddit, and it does very correctly convey how it felt. I mean, it is crazy. So if you can see this, this is the George Washington Bridge. There's us right there driving, and yeah, this is what New York City looked like. So there's the Empire State Building. There's the World Trade Center. There's a bunch of other buildings.
I'll have to take your word for that. Goodness gracious.
Yeah, it was truly crazy. So it's affecting my steps, and that's really the main thing that it's doing.
And this is
Yeah, people
the
are.
smoke from Canada. Is that what that is?
Yep, from the fires in the North countries. Just the wind took it in the right direction. So it actually sounds like it's Philadelphia and Lancaster and Harrisburg that have it worse today. So the air quality index last night for New York was like 350, which is hazardous, and it's like 190 today. So hopefully it'll get a little bit better, but it does seem like the fires are slowing a little bit. So yeah, what are you gonna do? You know what it smelled like?
Campfire? No!
It actually
Inappropriate.
did smell like a campfire, but I don't have a campfire sound mechanism.
Crackle,
So
crackle,
it is what
crackle.
it is. But crazy, crazy week for both of us. You definitely a little bit of a bigger deal, but dude, also Philadelphia, interesting place. The opioid epidemic is so much worse there than anywhere that we frequent here in New York. It is so bad. Um, but and we were in like downtown, like the middle of Philadelphia, like by all the museums and stuff. But and if Pennsylvania has these weird liquor laws, so you can't buy beer at grocery stores, so it's worse than Utah. Um, but then the bars are crazy cheap. So we went to the oldest bar in Philadelphia and
Hmm.
happened to go in on 50-cent wing night. Mwah! I'm moving to Philadelphia tomorrow. So
Other than the
it
opioids.
was a
As
good
long
time.
as nobody sets any tires on fire, you'll be fine.
Yes, yes. Other than the opioids. I mean, we didn't have any. That for what it's worth, as many homeless, hunched over people as there were, none of them seemed to be causing any trouble. I saw a guy that was in sort of like, you know, there's the building, and sometimes the door is like set into the building. There was
Hmm.
a homeless guy standing in front of the door that was in sort of like Spider-Man on top of a building pose, but he had all of these wine corks, and he just kept trying to tip them so that they were standing straight up, but they were tipping over after he let go of them. But he's Spider-Manning with these wine corks, and that was the most crazy homeless person I saw. So
All right.
it's a
Whatever
little
keeps you
story.
busy, I guess.
Yep. Um, yeah. So today we're talking about social contagion, and I would love to introduce the topic, but of course, I do have to do my ad read. Um,
Yes.
so I'm pretty happy. Um, when you are a social media empire like nobody asks, one of the goals that you set is to sort of legitimize through branding. You know, so everyone starts with the Harry's razors and the Keeps, right? The ones that seem to sponsor every podcast. But as you move up, you start to get more legitimate brands, and I'm really excited about this. This episode is sponsored by the National Institute of Health Public Service Announcement System. All right, this is what it says. It says, it has come to the attention of the NIH that, correlated with the fluorination of public water supplies and the increased particulate matter in breathable air, the average relaxed volume of the American human tongue has increased by 20%. This has been a gradual change over the last 20 years, but should be noticeable upon self-examination. In studies of tongue size in the late 90s and early 2000s, at relaxed state, a human tongue is unlikely to touch the inside of your lower molars, but rather have an estimated 1 millimeter gap from your teeth. Additionally, the posterior portion of your tongue was up to 30% smaller vertically, allowing for greater airflow and decreased strain on breathing apparatus. While changes in tongue volume have gone unreported, new data indicates that without regular tongue exercise, Americans can expect to experience detrimental health effects to their respiratory system within years, as well as discomfort from the size of their tongues as early as today. Your tongue used to be smaller, and now it takes up almost too much of your mouth. Can you tell? Doesn't your tongue feel just a little uncomfortable? Can it find rest? Where is your tongue right now? Is it above the top of your front teeth here? Does it really feel normal? Of course not. It's swollen. It's uncomfortable. Your tongue, it feels like a nightmare. Cut it out. Shave it off. You'll feel better then. Cut out your tongue. This episode was sponsored by the National Institute of Health Public Announcement System.
Wait, was any of that real though?
Ah,
It sounded just real
what?
enough.
Nope. I made it all up.
Okay.
I made it all up. But doesn't your tongue feel weird now? I was writing it and my tongue was like, where is my tongue supposed to go? And I'll never, ever feel comfortable again. You're welcome, everybody.
Yay.
Social contagion.
Yay. Let's cut it off. It'll be great. We
Let's-
don't need them anymore.
Let's cut it off. Yep. Tongue gross. Ew. Yes. So that was our little segue into social contagion, which is a pretty it's sometimes a controversial topic. It's an uncomfortable one to think about because it deals with how we re-understand memories, how we re-understand ourselves and our own emotions. And it calls into question the very nature of being a person. So it's a controversial topic, and we wanted to make sure that nobody asked that we got it right. So we went around and we asked, who is the foremost scientist in all of science? Who's the most science-y of scientists? And every time we asked, one name got brought up. Ladies and gentlemen, I am so excited to introduce to you for the first time on podcasts, on any media. They're pretty reclusive. It's Science-y McScience Man. Hey, Science-y, how you doing?
Hi, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We're glad to have you. I mean, again, it's crazy to be in the place that we are now as a podcast with the NIH sponsoring and now Science-y McScience Man. So we just wanted to ask, we're asking sort of for a general overview for our viewers so that we can better understand the concept of social contagion. So what can you tell us about that?
Yes, of course. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about the science here. So social contagion, a buzzword that's often used now, has been referred to for a long time. Even Adam Smith talked about something related to this. In 1759, he said it is natural for humans to imagine themselves in another situation, experience motor mimicry, and that this mimicry is almost a reflex when interacting with another person. And then in 1993, the term emotional contagion was coined by a psychology professor named Elaine Hatfield in the University of Hawaii. And they suggested that this is a non-conscious and automatic mimicry that was used to connect with their companions and would lead to the convergence of emotions between two people. Since then, there's been quite a bit of literature that's come out both in humans, non-human primates, and rodents, looking at this was often referred to as emotional contagion. Uh, yeah, and I'd love to dive into that a little more if that's something you're interested in. Or, yeah, what direction would you guys like to talk about?
Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you for that overview. And anyone, if you have a hard time understanding Sciencey McSciencemen, they are from the Falkland Islands, and so it's a very specific type of accent that we all really struggle with understanding. So,
Well, and when I
and they
heard that the
laugh really weird
NIH,
there.
when I heard that the NIH said I needed to cut off my tongue, I did. I mean, really, that's my only opportunity for funding. So I do understand without a tongue, I'm a little hard to understand sometimes.
Yep, yep. Hey, well, you're doing a great job.
Jokes.
Coming in with the jokes. All right, yeah. So, uh, so on social contagion, I guess what we're wondering here is what characterizes a social contagion, and what sort of ideas, emotions, memories are the things that are likely to produce social contagion in your scientific opinion, Mrs. Scienceman?
Well, so the most common found in the literature is following stress or social defeat. That may have to do with what's easiest to research, but that's definitely the most common, and has been looked at in rodents and humans. And it's interesting to see. So in rodents may experience some kind of social defeat. And then if they're ruined with one of their conspecifics, their cage mates that didn't experience it, um, that conspecific may begin experiencing a similar physiological stress or depressive and anxiety-like behaviors. Um, this can also be from viewing the traumatic experience. So there's still research on the viewing of the traumatic experience of a conspecific, as well as the interacting with the conspecific following the defeat.
So
And
if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying like in rodents, when you put a rodent into an experience with somebody that's already experiencing some sort of trauma or anxiety or whatever, this new rodent will sort of experience that anxiety as well.
yes,
Without
yeah. Here are the measurements we can do behavioral tests, and the behavioral tests suggest the rodent is experiencing something like anxiety or depression. They can also measure outcomes like cortisol levels or different things along the HPA axis, which is the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. And almost everything across that axis increases in the way that you would expect it to increase someone who's going through the stressful event.
Okay, yeah. So, like in my mind, I'm thinking, is this new rodent sort of just borrowing the anxiety and sort of sharing the load? Because that sounds kind of nice. But
Yeah, that's actually super interesting because there's something called social buffering, where the animal that experiences the trauma or social defeat actually can feel better by being paired with a cage mate that hadn't experienced it. So it almost reads like a trade-off. The one that hadn't starts to feel more stressed, and the one that does starts to feel a decrease in stress when they come together.
I like it. See, it doesn't sound so terrible. I mean, you're talking about emotional contagion. I don't know if that's exactly the same as social contagion. They're definitely related, I'm sure. Um, with social contagion, are we talking more about various things that are going on in the current social dynamic, the current trends, that kind of thing? Is that how that differentiates? Is it like what is the stressor of the moment that we can all share together with each other?
Yeah, I'm not sure. To be honest, I've seen social contagion used in a variety of ways. So I think that it's capturing quite a bit, which sometimes is lumped in with what they say emotional contagion is. But yeah, emotional contagion, you're right. It does seem to focus more on how you act and how you feel in response to somebody else's experience. Um, when you guys talk about social contagion, what definition are you working with?
I could step in on that. And so that this is what we're working with here, which is that social contagion is the ubiquitous process by which information, including attitudes, emotions, or behaviors, are rapidly spread throughout a group from one member to others without rational thought and reason. So
Right.
that's the definition that we're going off. So it seems like it's an umbrella term under which emotional contagion can be included.
Yeah. I actually think that that sounds very similar. The attitudes, behaviors, it being similar or kind of spreading from one person or from a few people that experience something. That does sound very similar to me. And the fact that it's unconscious and people are often very unaware of it happening.
Hmm.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. It comes up. Yeah, exactly what you said. It comes up sort of subconsciously. Yeah, so some of the things that get included under the umbrella of social contagion is things like following fads, trends, or rituals. And so it doesn't necessarily need to be dangerous to be considered a social contagion, but it does. Social contagion does tend to be brought up in uh, social media, in the news, when it involves something dangerous. So, um, classic instances include clusters of violence or self harm, eating disorders, cutting behavior, and suicide, which are all considered affected by social contagion processes. And so it can become harmful, but it's not necessarily harmful. I mean, it seems like things as simple as like fashion trends are an incredibly innocuous form of widespread social contagion.
Yeah, it would be very interesting to look into whether or not those things are driven by the things like expressions, vocalizations, postures, behaviors, feelings that are being picked up from emotional contagion. Is that what is driving these pickup of fads? I mean, is there I could see there being a deep relationship there.
Yeah. But it does seem like it is an area of science that has a lot of gray around it. Is that what you have experienced in your reading?
Yes. Well, being able to study this in humans is very difficult. So I think that that's a part of what makes it very gray. And then social media being so important in a lot of this is also a very difficult thing to study.
Hmm, very interesting. Well,
But there,
sciency. Oh,
oh,
oh, sorry. Go on.
sorry. I was just gonna say there is some interesting research out there about social contagion or emotional contagion happening almost just as effectively through social media outlets as it does in person.
That is very
I
interesting.
mean, I think so many people now, your social circle is often very much in social media. You there's a different level of intimacy with your phone and your computer uh, these days than there used to be. Sometimes it's even more intimate than if you were, having lunch with somebody. Like a lot of people really do pour out their emotions and connect with people that way. And you can see how, I mean, on a certain level, you can see how these things might take off. How, okay, I share this sadness with you. I can start to share this thought process. You can really start to get kind of wrapped up in somebody else's stuff, if you will. As someone who's been wrapped up in other people's stuff before, I get it.
Well,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and there's direct research looking at that what you experience on Twitter or Facebook, those have both been reviewed, seems to impact how you yourself feel, and it happens very quickly.
Yeah.
awesome. Well, Sciencey, thank you very much for joining us. I know that you have a number of other commitments, with NASA and with the NSA and with other incredible scientific institutions. So we will let you go, but we very much appreciate you. How did you enjoy your first time on Nobody Asked?
Loved it. This is great. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Nobody asked. See ya.
Loved having
All
you.
right. Well, that was awesome. It's great to be in a position to have guest stars on the show. So yeah, that was a pretty good overview of social contagion as a topic. But uh, as you can see, the science around it is pretty difficult. Getting hard science on it is difficult, but it can be sort of this tangential term to certain research that we find, where it's like, oh, that this is proposed as a possible explanation for the conclusions of different research. But it can get gray because it is so difficult to study in humans, because there's just so many levels and valences to human being. And so it does end up being a term, I think, that gets bastardized and taken advantage of. And so that is a pretty good jump into the way that it's being used now. So the reason that we are talking about social contagion is that it is brought up a lot with the increases in the number of young people that are identifying as transgender. Um, at, this has been brought up before with so-called increases in various different outcomes of young people. So mental health outcomes, when a greater proportion of people were being diagnosed with depression and bipolar disorder. This was also called a social contagion by a number of people. People that might tell you something to the effect of, well, just don't think about it, right? Because the number of people that were being diagnosed with those disorders was increasing rapidly, and people wanted an explanation. And there are two pretty big explanations that are used. There's one, which is that legitimizing the feelings of people is allowing them to dig deeper into them. So if you allow people to call themselves depressed, then they'll only get more depressed, which is very interesting as a hypothesis. The other, which I think rings true to a lot more people, especially people that have mental disorders, is that as the stigma has slowly, so slowly, been lifted from these mental disorders, people feel more comfortable going out and seeking help that results in a diagnosis. And so, if more people go to therapy, if we encourage people to get the help that they need, sort of a counterintuitive result of that is that there will be an increase in diagnoses. And so, just in terms of raw numbers, it'll seem like the depression problem is getting worse. This is that phenomenon specifically is pretty well described in statistics, and is one of the reasons, for example, that around the country, violent crime has gone down consistently for the last 30 or 40 years, except for one form of violent crime, which is sexual assault and rape. Sexual assault and rape appears to have increased, not if you go by self reporting metrics, where it's slightly gone down, but when you go with crime statistics, it's amplified by almost 3 times around the country, because people feel more comfortable reporting instances of sexual assault, which do not fit the traditional model of like Batman, crazy guy in an alley sexual assault. So it'll appear, if you just look at those numbers, like sexual assault has increased, but if you look at self-reporting numbers, it doesn't. These are all things where you have to interpret both the methods of finding numbers and the numbers themselves and figure out why exactly do the numbers go up. So mental health has been considered a social contagion. It's impossible to say that's been disproved, but I do think that fewer people agree with that idea now than maybe 10 years ago. Homosexuality and different forms of sexuality have been considered a type of social contagion. And it's true, the number of people that self-identify as gay, lesbian, and bisexual has increased dramatically in the last 30 or 40 years, probably because it's more acceptable. And so people that
Exactly.
were already gay now don't feel like they'll be kicked out by their families, although that still happens, or killed, although that still happens. So when people
Exactly.
feel more comfortable being honest about the thing that they are, you will find that more people are that thing. Fun. So now we get to the topic of the moment. It's our good friend being trans. It's in the media, there's no other problems with America. And so Republicans have gone, we've fixed everything except for voting.
Or nothing.
But
We
we
fixed
fixed
nothing.
everything. No, we fixed everything. And so what's the next thing we need to focus on? It's trans women in sports. That's a very big deal. That's probably the biggest deal. And
Super
various
important.
other forms of transgender legislation, some of which I should just, come out here. There are conversations to be had about different benchmarks for things, right? How young should people be able to access transgender surgeries, right? There's a lot of things to weigh. I'm not saying that there are
Yes.
no questions to be asked. I'm saying it's weird how much Republicans are concerned about it. And it all comes down to, at least in the academic side of the conservative party, that transgenderism, being trans, is a form of social contagion. And they can prove it with one study which I just want to say, as I bring it up, that I think that the person that did the study did a great job.
Okay.
I think that this study has led to some negative interpretations among the right. It's definitely been used a lot on things like the Daily Wire and other conservative media outlets. And for that reason, the person that published the study has received an unbelievable amount of guff. Okay. When it first came out, I think it was Lisa Littman. When it first came out, Brown University put it on their front page. It was published in a very well-respected journal. And as it began to get co-opted by the conservative movement, there was a reaction among LGBT advocates, which was to say that Lisa Littman had created a false diagnosis of something called rapid onset gender dysphoria, which she didn't. This created a hellstorm, as social media tends to do. Brown took it off of all of their news sites. It was unpublished by the journal and then went through a second round of review where they assured us that the people that reviewed it would be LGBT advocates, so they wouldn't have a bias. And now it's had to be published in a different journal. And Lisa Littman has dealt with a significant impact on her career, even though I've read a lot of papers. I think this is very well written and done very, very well. So I'm going to bring us through it really quickly, and then we'll
Okay.
talk about social contagion. I'm sorry if I'm talking a lot. Do you have any questions right now, Mom?
No, I do think it's important. I'm just looking at this just now, but I think it's important to acknowledge the purpose of the study was to collect data about parents' observations and experiences. This is all coming from the parents' perspective.
Absolutely. And there's going to be a couple of different pieces of information. And this is the abstract summary, the purpose and the methods summary. They go way more into detail. But what I like is that scientists will sometimes take advantage of these summary sections and omit key pieces of information in order to make it appear that their research says something greater than it actually does. However, in this case, Lisa Littman forecasted what pieces of information were clearly going to affect the data and included them up front and center. It says that it's a parent study. She mentions exactly which websites she found the parents from. And these websites are very clearly parents who are against their children becoming trans. They're upfront about the whole thing. Now, the reason that they go to these websites is it's very easy to find eligible participants in them, but they're upfront about the bias. And here's one more thing they're upfront about. Here's why we cannot get mad at scientists just because of the people that co-opt their research. In the methods section, she says, for this descriptive exploratory study, what that is doing is it is benchmarking the whole thing. It's going, this is not, we're not creating a correlation. We are not saying that one thing led to another. We are making no claims. We are saying among this group, here are the percentage of people that found this and this and this, so that it can be used in additional reviews and studies. And so it can be interpreted. So we're going to be incredibly clear about how we got this information and then allow interpretation by other scientists that are looking into this topic. However, the reaction to this research, which is fairly innocuous, is definitely going to prevent people from doing additional research, which might actually support the claims of trans individuals, because merely doing science people consider to be delegitimizing the experience of trans individuals. So people are stepping on their own feet a little bit. But then again, I have a little bit of a pro-science bias. What are you going to do? Can you tell I care? All right. In online forums, parents have reported that their children seemed to experience a sudden or rapid onset of gender dysphoria, appearing for the first time during puberty or even after its completion. Parents describe that the onset of gender dysphoria seemed to occur in the context of belonging to a peer group where one, multiple, or even all of the friends who have become gender dysphoric and transgender identified during the same time frame. Parents also report that their children exhibited an increase in social media and internet use prior to disclosure of a transgender identity. Recently, clinicians have reported that post-puberty presentations of gender dysphoria in natal females that appear to be rapid in onset is a phenomenon they're seeing more and more in their clinic. Academics have raised questions about the role of social media in the development of gender dysphoria. The purpose of this study was to collect data about parents' observations, experiences, and perspectives about their adolescent and young adult children showing signs of an apparent sudden or rapid onset of gender dysphoria that began during or after puberty, and develop hypotheses about factors that may contribute to the onset and or expression of gender dysphoria among this demographic group. Interesting. So the important words here are rapid onset. So the idea that there were no warning signs that the individual was going to end up becoming trans, because that is a whistle for social contagion, right? That they entered this group and then became polluted by the virus of being trans.
Right.
So that rapid onset is a pretty important word here. And also, I love, they say apparent sudden or rapid onset of gender dysphoria, which is to say, this is not necessarily rapid onset gender dysphoria. It was simply identified as rapid onset by the parents, which
Exactly.
includes wiggle room here. Perhaps these parents who, based on the groups that they're in, are not exactly accepting of transgender groups. By the way, we did look at all three of these, and they are definitely anti-trans and treat trans as some sort of weird social fad, negative movement that's destroying children. So it does allow wiggle room for maybe parents that are already prone to not be accepting of their children being trans are less likely to notice that their kids have trans attributes, or their kids are more likely to hide them and more likely to isolate from parents that are less accepting of those things,
Okay.
and find alternate communities like friend groups that share like minds or like the internet. Also, by the way, are they becoming more isolated as teenagers? This must be the first generation to do that at that age.
Hmm.
Oh wait,
Hmm.
no.
I would
Anyway,
also
my
like
bias.
to bring attention to how focused they seem to be on their female children being suddenly trans. When it's interesting to me in particular when you focus on women that way, or young women that way, because there seems to be this obsession with the idea that young women are morons and they don't know how they feel about anything for some reason. They don't know how they feel. They're just being emotional. They're just being whatever. And it's very, to me, invalidating when they do that. I think we know that if you're talking about like on the autism spectrum, a lot of times when females are on the spectrum, they do a better job masking than their male counterparts do, right? They seem to get some of the social cues better if we're speaking in big generalities. And I think that might be why some of these parents are oblivious, is because women do a better job of masking a lot of times. We can fake it when we want to, a little bit better. And if you're in a large social group, you're going to go along with the social group if it feels safe to you. There is this, to me, women like to be safe. And sometimes you will fake being a certain type of person to feel safe in this community if this is the only community you have. Now you bring social media and the entire community that's out there that you might be able to be yourself with and not have to pretend
Mhm.
around. And it changes things, you know?
Absolutely.
But maybe that's just me as not a scientist.
Maybe that. So I
Maybe.
will say that part of the reason that they target women in here is somewhere up here. There were 256 parent completed surveys that met study criteria, and the children described were predominantly natal female. And so this is one of the main reasons I think that they focus on that is just that it appears as though natal females make up a larger percentage of this group, and so that's led to the focus. But of course, that is also explained by some of the things that you said. So these are all fun hypotheses. Do you see how good this study is? Because it puts the numbers in front of you, and then you're like, what would explain that? And then all of these ideas that we have are things that you might be able to come up with a study for. And this is what we'll all be doing when robots replace us in every other field. So start thinking about it, people. What studies could we do to figure out whether or not our hypotheses are correct, right? What would
Mhm.
describe if it was about females' ability to mask their emotions better, or to play closer to the vest? What would show that it's that the parents are less willing to acknowledge early warning signs? There's all sorts of different hypotheses. One of the hypotheses is, how likely is it that it is social contagion? Now, unfortunately, there's all sorts of ethics concerns with intentionally exposing cis young women to social contagion, but we could try it. It'd be fun. Um,
Yes, let's
we
expose
shall
them.
see.
Let's make it look more and more like young women have no minds of their own and can't possibly just be trying some stuff out. Let's just see how this fits. Does it fit?
Yes.
Maybe.
Social contagion, it does seem like a better and more sciencey way to say the gay agenda. But you know, there's also science to it. I'm not trying to shit on it too much. Um, there's elements of it that are interesting. So here are the results. Uh, the mean age was 16.4 at the time of survey completion, and the mean age was 15.2 when they announced a transgender identification. Per parent report, 41% of the children had expressed a non-heterosexual sexual orientation before identifying as trans. Many
Okay.
had reported being diagnosed with at least one mental health disorder or neurodevelopmental disability prior to the onset of their gender dysphoria. In 36.8% of the friendship groups described, parent participants indicated that the majority of the members became transgender identified. Parents reported subjective declines in their child's mental health and in the parent child relationships since the child came out, and that the children expressed a range of behaviors that included expressing distrust of transgender people in 22.7% of cases, stopping spending time with non trans friends in 25% of cases, trying to isolate themselves from their family in 50% of cases, and only trusting information about gender dysphoria from transgender sources in 46.6% of cases. Most,
Think.
86.7%, of the parents reported that, along with the sudden or rapid onset of gender dysphoria, their child either had an increase in social media and internet use, belonged to a friend group in which one or multiple friends became trans identified during a similar time frame, or both. Spicy, spicy. So,
I find those frustrating. I don't know. Should we go through them one by one again? I don't know. Ugh.
if you'd like, tell me what you're thinking.
Well, okay. We have children that are not trusting, like almost half are no longer trusting information about gender dysphoria from non-transgender sources. It's like, well, yeah, obviously. Why would you trust it from sources that seem to hate you if this is something that you identify as? You don't want somebody that doesn't understand a thing telling you what you are. And that's probably how a lot of these children felt to begin with. Somebody's always telling them who they are, and when you're a teenager you start to explore who you really are, right? And with puberty hitting, obviously you're going to start encountering things, partially your body changing, and you might be hating it. This is not the body you want to be in if you really are transgender. Or I lost where I was going.
Yeah, I just hitting on the transgender sources. I think that there's a little clue earlier in the paper about that as well, right? Because we remember that all of those parents are from those uh, trans we need to come up with a word for these groups, but they're like trans delegitimizing platforms of these three different
I saw the
organizations,
word
right? So
D
where do you think?
sister somewhere.
Yeah, I don't know, but that these three groups, we've looked at them, and they put a lot of information out there that is explicitly anti-trans. And so I'm wondering if these kids, the sources that they're not trusting, are specifically from these organizations that delegitimize their experience. Because yeah, if the only other source that you're showing them is from a group that is actively trying to show that their identity is a fad, yeah, I don't think they're going to be incentivized to hear you out. And if 50% of them are hearing you out, that's way better than any of my Republican friends act. So good on them.
Yeah. It's because it's coming from your parents, right? If your parent, of course you want to listen to your parents, and you want to trust that they have your best interests at heart and that they're coming at you from a loving place. And so you might try to listen to them, right? You might try to hear what they're saying, but there's a point where just like we have a certain percentage that are basically start to cut their family members out and isolate themselves away from their families. It's like, well, yeah, you're telling me that I don't exist, that I'm not real, that what I am is wrong, that I don't know myself. Yeah, who wants to be around that? And that's me putting it nicely. A lot of times they say much more terrible things than that. So
Yeah.
And again, they're teenagers. They are discovering who they are. They're discovering their sexuality. Before that, they weren't really sexual beings. So even though maybe they were tomboys, maybe they were whatever, it didn't really mean anything at that point. And then there's a point where it just suddenly does.
Well, and this is specifically selecting for people that are not tomboys, right? That in order to be eligible for this, that your parent needs to identify that there was no warning signs of like a non-gender conforming identity. So
Yeah.
you had to be a girly girl before, or a boy boy.
Right. And saying it's a social
Girly boy
contagion.
boy.
Yeah, because now you're associating with all of these friends where at least one identifies as trans or queer in some way. Now you have caught it socially because now it's cool. Oh, now I can be cool. Like literally some of the things I was listening to, that was the excuse they were getting. Oh, well, now it's cool to be trans. It's like, okay, but that you're not really you know what I mean? Like you're not going to get hormone replacement therapy and get any kind of body modification done to be cool.
Ooh, you are really opening yourself up to some devil's advocate.
In a trans way. In a trans way. You think somebody's going to take hormones to be cool? Let's hear it. Let's hear it.
Devil's
Let's hear
advocate.
it.
Okay, you. Hello, I'm the devil. Oh wait, I can do a little voice changer action.
Let's do it.
That sounds like what the devil would sound like? Yeah.
Hello, I'm the devil. How's it going? You say in your argument that people who are just joining a movement to be cool won't do any body modification to be a part of the in-group. Have you ever seen ear gauges? They're gross. And people do them to be in the in-group. Have you ever seen piercings? They're pretty sick, but they're also body modifications. So... I'm the devil! Wait, no, I'm not the devil. I'm an advocate for the devil.
Okay, I get what you're saying.
Wow, that guy was a dick.
But I don't think you're going to modify your genitals in that way just to be cool. I don't. It's a big deal. I mean, as it is, I think that some people think that you have to be, if you're trans, you need to be all the way trans, right? You need to be ready to change out all of your equipment. You need to be able to do all that. If you want to be, not that, okay, I'm trans. I feel I have a male spirit and I want to walk through the world like that, but that I don't necessarily require changing my hormones or changing my body parts. because that's a big deal. One, it's expensive. Two, it's time consuming. It doesn't happen overnight. You can't just boom, I'm done. I've completed it. Uh, and it's a lot, man. It's a lot changing your body parts out. It's a lot. It's
It is a lot. But what we're opening up here, right, is I think a venue for a little bit more nuanced conversation. But the problem here is, of course, that so much of the conversation forays into the like, I know you better than you know you type language. And you
yeah,
know who that's never worked on? Children, right? It's just a phase is like, it's been a meme forever. And it's a meme because it's impossible to tell someone that you know their lived experience better than they do. It's and also it's so weird when you're a kid and your parent is like, I've experienced this, because you just know them as a parent, right? And when I was dealing with depression and then dad was like, I've dealt with this, I was like, shut up, you bald man. Bald people can't be sad. And certainly they can't be my dad and be sad. You don't even cry at movies, you know? So what the heck?
yes, we were once young, and we had extra emotions dumping into our body. Yeah,
But you
I'm with
act like
you.
you weren't young. That's the thing about parents, is you got to choose one, okay? Here's my thing about parents. This whole time, okay, one, I got the best parents ever. So that does,
Oh,
I
thank you.
think, affect how people are going to interpret what I'm saying here. But the the thing about parents in general, maybe not mine, but in general, is that the when they reprimand you, it's from this position of like, I've never done anything wrong, so I don't understand you, and so you need to do things. And that's the generation of parenting that's like, I don't need to explain it to you, I'm in charge. That's what this begets. So then later, when you were like, I was once young, it was like, oh, that didn't come up when you were disciplining me, right? There was no, I understand where you're coming from then. There was just, you suck, little man, go to your room. That didn't ever happen to me, but except when I said the F word in the sixth
I
grade.
know. You know what? We got guilted by an old lady who was the age of our
Miss
parents, that
Petrovich.
making us feel like we needed to parent a little extra. It's like, it's fine. What he said was hilarious.
Yeah. You
Oh,
need a
okay,
parallel extra?
you're grounded,
Look
I
how
guess.
I turned out. I got a studio apartment in Manhattan. I got a bed sheet and a podcast with my mother. Look at that. Look at that over there. You see that? That's a guitar I owned at the time. I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing pretty good. Yeah, man, what are you gonna do? Well, we've digressed. It's very hard to tell people that you understand them better than them. This is another thing about social contagion and effects to memory, is that a lot of truths about psychology are incredibly difficult to internalize. And so things like your memory is wrong feel so deeply frustrating that people will refuse to believe it. Juries, when they're told that false confessions are incredibly common and false memories are incredibly common under duress, juries will say, I don't care that an expert said that. In my own world, I know I would never admit to killing someone or create a false memory of killing someone. This is the reality of certain elements of psychology, is that you have to break through the fact that people are themselves while learning that they're wrong about themselves. It's frustrating.
While learning
We've
that they're
opened up.
wrong about themselves. That's an
It's difficult.
interesting. It's an interesting thing to say, though.
But of course, it is used and co opted by certain nefarious forces who sure like to selectively listen to scientists, dickheads. They're making up global warming, but I will listen to this one Brown study, even though it's not even making the claims I'm saying it's making. uh, it is co-opted, that idea that you can not know yourself, right? We, I think, pretty reasonably know that homosexuality is not a choice at this point. If you still think it's a choice, Man, where have you been? Where have you been? We did Modern Family, okay? We're done with the conversation. Macklemore made that song and homophobia died. Stop it. I
Yeah.
can't change.
Yeah. But
So
I mean, we do hear about people that detransition. I mean, not that many people really transition. Yes, the numbers have increased, they've kind of doubled recently, but that's still a very small number. And again, transitioning, not everybody wants to change their body when they transition. Sometimes it's just I want to be acknowledged in a different way. And I don't know why that is so offensive to people, the idea that somebody might want to use different pronouns. I don't know why that bothers people so much. Just do it. If you want to be called something else,
it
just call
seems
it
like,
something else.
oh, okay, obviously I agree with you. I think that people, they get on their moral high ground again selectively, and are like, it feels like I'm feeding into a delusion. That's sort of the realm that they get into, and I, I, I don't I don't know. It is weird, right? Because these are often the same people that are like, the thing that's beautiful about America is the freedom. Okay, if you want to be over there and you want to fart on smokestack and then inhale it, that is your prerogative. Just don't make me fart on smokestack and inhale it. But then they want to be the ones that prescribe. It's this whole thing. Bathroom bills have become their own little nightmare. But there's real conversations to be had. There's real
Yeah.
conversations to be had. What is a reasonable age for a child that does want to medically transition? What is a reasonable age for that to happen? Is it complicated by the fact that if you definitely know yourself and you definitely identify as the opposite sex, that the actual lived experience of being the opposite sex will be more true to form if you medically intervene earlier? Does that factor change anything? I don't know, but it is a good conversation.
It's a
If we
good
could break it down
conversation.
to the constituent conversations, this would all become a lot more interesting, right? What is the value of safe spaces for natal women? How do we deal with things like rape crisis centers and allowing trans women into the crisis centers? Because
If they were
the thing
raped,
is, okay, see, we're simplifying, right? I don't think that most people that talk about this think that people become trans to victimize women. I don't think that. However, I think that they think that people that want to victimize women will find ways to do it,
that is true.
and that some of these people are real fucking douchebags, and that if you're looking for marks, a rape crisis center might be a good place for it. And if it's as simple as self-identifying, then people that are not trans and are predators can take advantage of this rule, which otherwise is very accepting and true. So, how do we balance that? How do we balance
I guess
legitimizing identities
how
with
big of a
safety?
problem is that? It feels like it's such a minuscule population of people that would fake being trans just to get access to victims. I mean, that just is.
Well, how many men do you think are predators? Like what proportion? I mean,
I
you and I
don't know.
disagree on this, but I'm interested in your
I
opinion.
don't think it's most men. So, uh,
Oh, it's definitely not most men, but also most men aren't trans women. So we're comparing two proportions. We're comparing a
correct.
1% to a what percent?
Ugh. Let's just say 10%.
Okay, so that's way more men are predators, which I think 10% might be high. But let's just go with it theoretically, because I think that
But
it
I don't
will
think.
be
But
entrenched another way.
predators is a spectrum as well. I don't think that they would all be willing to
Predators
do
is a
that.
spectrum as well. Well, what? Yeah. So predators is a spectrum. Um, what number will take advantage of a system? Um, I don't know. I think that it could
All of them.
literally be 1% of that 10%, right? So the proportion is one predator to every 10 trans women. That does not feel like good numbers to me.
I get what you're saying, but I just feel like a predator wouldn't really care one way or the like. Listen, people have been raped in bathrooms, and there was no gender element involved at all. If a man wants to sneak into a
Yes.
woman's bathroom and overpower a woman, he will do it as a man. He doesn't need to pretend to be trans
Okay.
to do it.
We're getting again into an area where I know the counter arguments, but when I make them, I want to make it clear that these don't represent my stance. But I
Okay.
know the counter arguments and I would like to use them because this is an incredibly popular counter argument to bathroom bills, which is very similar, but weirdly used by liberals to if a bad guy wants a gun, they'll get a gun, so why regulate guns? But it's in the opposite direction. Now it's liberals using it. It's very funny. But here's what you take away when you take away the ability to determine visually whether or not people are allowed into bathrooms. You take away social policing. This is the counter argument, which is that if you saw a guy that looked like me going into a women's bathroom, going, he, hey, he, and walking in, at one point, the entirety of society would be like, get that fucking guy out of that bathroom. But as it becomes a greater question of who is trans and who isn't, social policing will go away. That is the concern / counter argument, which is that people are no longer going to feel comfortable policing who can go into bathrooms as an individual for fear that they misgender Kalina, you know? So that's the counter argument. The question
It's
is,
weird to me that
rape
people were
victims,
policing bathrooms to begin with. I don't know.
yes, they should all be gender neutral and they should all be single users. We've got to deal with the infrastructure that we have.
I wasn't. Of course, we have to deal with what we have. Of course,
Um,
it's hard because we lived in Europe, right? Me and you, and you know, we've lived in Europe before, and they would regularly just close one bathroom down, and now everybody is suddenly in the men's room. Everybody. Here's a dude peeing right out in the open, just like you do at a urinal, and then women are going into the cubicles. But here's the major difference: is in Europe there was very often bathroom attendants.
Yeah, they seem like good policemen. Look, there's that. But if we come back to the original argument, which was about rape crisis centers, you're talking about small proportions, right? But you're also talking about women that have recently been victimized who legitimately just don't want to be around natal men. Now, this is a question to me. This is a question because what we're implicitly okay with right here is saying, even though not all men are predators, we are okay with discriminating on the basis of sex in terms of entering this facility. And Mom, both you and I are absolutely certain that men are sexually assaulted. And we're not talking about even letting men that have been sexually assaulted in there because of making the largest proportion of rape victims, which is women, comfortable there. We are okay with discrimination. And yet we are for some reason not okay with another form of discrimination for the same purpose, which discriminates against a much smaller proportion of the population. This is a question.
What do you? I don't know if I don't know if I understood what the last part meant. Say that again. But which part of the population?
We have complaints about creating female-only spaces in rape crisis centers, which is just one specific instance. And it does need to be a nuanced conversation. This does not apply to women's bathrooms, which are a very different conversation. We're okay with not allowing men into them in order to make recent female rape victims comfortable, but we are not okay with discriminating against trans women.
I mean, I'm not, but it's really hard, right? Because trans women, again, somebody transitioning could be anywhere in their transition. They could look fully like a woman, right? Or they could look totally like a man still. So one of them is going to be scary to somebody that's been raped, and one is not going to be scary to someone that's just been raped. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe you just have a little cubby hole of, for each individual. I don't know. I've never been to a rape crisis
That's it.
center.
But we've opened it up, right? Just that. I mean, one, trans people, many trans people and trans advocates are going to say that that's calling trans women not women. That's delegitimizing their claim to womanhood. And
They got to
but it
calm
does
down.
open up. There's nuance. Welcome, mother.
I listened to
Sorry,
much,
one second.
so much stuff I hated today. What?
Welcome, mother.
There
we go.
I listened to so much stuff I did not like today while researching this social contagion, right? This idea that we are socially turning into something we aren't really because we're trendy and stupid. And there was one where they were talking about this very thing, this idea that, are trans women, or are they trans women? It's like I get the point, right? I get the point. I don't understand the obsession with saying trans women are women. I do think it's weird. I also think it's weird that people can become TERFs and be like, I'm a real woman. You're stealing my, my identity. You're trying to do. I think all of that's bizarre. I don't understand any of it. I just feel like, a tide lifts everyone. Let's just all lift up together. But I understand safety and not feeling safe in a rape crisis center. But that feels like a real individual situation all the way around. You treat that person individually with how they would be comfortable.
Yep.
That's just the way I feel about it. I don't know. It
is complicated.
It feels like this, first of all, I feel like these bathroom bills are all a distraction from real shit. Not that this isn't real, but it's not. It doesn't have to be this giant thing. There have been trans people in our bathrooms all the time, and nobody noticed because they went into the bathroom that they most accurately identified with, right? So, if you're early in your transition, you might still be in the bathroom that you were in originally. Later on, you're like, I can't go into that bathroom anymore. It is now time for me to switch to this other bathroom. That's just the way it goes. And that's the way it should go. We don't really need people bothering people about this stuff because they get it wrong often enough. And it's getting it right is also wrong sometimes. Like you have a full beard. You've already transitioned. Why are we making you come in this bathroom? You look fully like a dude,
Oh, yeah. And we've seen recently a case where somebody went into the bathroom that they were legally required to go into and then got the shit beaten out of them because people thought that they were intentionally going into the wrong bathroom in order to victimize people. Yeah. This is the nightmare of the whole fucking scenario.
It's a nightmare. Go to the one that is most appropriate for where you are in your transition.
I mean, the main thing to me is that bathrooms are not in the same way that a rape crisis center is a safe space.
No, bathrooms aren't safe spaces at all.
For me, bathrooms are the least safe space. I hate them. I hate public bathrooms. Public rest stops, I am actively ready to fight in.
Yep.
Gyms, I don't like going to the gym because I hate locker rooms. These are my least safe places. I do not like them. And so that is what changes it. Is like, it's just got to be, I mean, we're probably just going to end up with a unisex bathroom situation, which is probably best. Yeah. Look at Dorth. Dorth says in Denmark we have a gender neutral bathroom. Well, who'd have thought that Denmark has it right? You tall motherfuckers. Yeah. Nice. Also, by the way, welcome, Dorothy.
Yes, welcome. I don't know, man.
And crafting with MTT and Scotland. Did we already say Scotland?
We didn't say Scotland. There's one more.
Venus de Militant.
There we go. Venus de Militant. I don't know, man. I just am bothered by the notion that young girls suddenly deciding they're trans is some sort of social contagion spreading disease. It bothers me greatly. while I agree some of them may not stay trans and they may just be experimenting with the idea, uh, call, and if all that you have to do to help them out with that is call them by a new name for a little while and use what pronouns they prefer at the moment, then do that. It is so not dangerous to give them that opportunity to explore that part of themselves, particularly when they're a teenager or younger. It's just not dangerous. Let them explore that, and then they'll find out. No, this doesn't really fit me. I don't feel fully female, but I don't feel this either. This isn't where I'm at. I'm just going to be, like just look, let them try it out. I just feel like sometimes when you hit puberty, it can be very dramatic for you, dramatic and traumatic. And suddenly you're a sexual being. And if you don't want to be a sexual being and you see people looking at you that way, you might want to do something to minimize that. And if it's okay, I'm going to be something else right now so that you don't look at me that way. I get it. Personally, I get it, man. It can be scary being a girl. If we believe that this is really a problem amongst girls, that Tumblr is turning them all into anorexic, suicidal, transgender people when they're none of those things, they're just following a fad. It's okay, man. But also, don't let it, they might really be trans. Maybe you've just never been open. Maybe they are really that person. So just don't be a dick, man. Don't tell people who they are. Let them tell you. Thank you, Colin.
Oh, I think that you're the best, Mom.
Thank you. I'm pretty great.
Well, this was a fun one. Do we think that we've missed anything? Almost certainly.
Yeah, it's a big topic. When
Yeah.
you talk about social contagion, again,
We
it's
try our
buzz
best.
language. It's a way to make something really judgmental sound smart when really it's just a judgment, and it's shitty. It's just shitty.
It does feel like people trying to fit what they see as a changing world to their existing worldview and trying to find some sort of situation that explains it. I mean, that to me, there's the more interesting question of like, as gender norms break down, what does it mean to be trans,
Yes,
right? Because
exactly.
people are like, oh, the hallmarks is being a tomboy, and it's like, okay, but that's the idea of masculinity and femininity are breaking down in a significant way, and like
Yes.
even me, like when I was dating, I was like, if the person I was dating had some sort of traditional idea of masculinity and femininity and those sort of like the roles there, that was a red flag for that relationship. I was like, no,
Yeah, it doesn't fit
don't,
you, right?
I don't want that. And actually, I think I mean, yeah, am I emotional? Yes, but I think I'm on the spectrum of masculinity. I'm certainly mad. And so it doesn't, but I just didn't want that. And it does feel better. It feels, I don't know, depressing to
I
be
can't
subjected to the roles.
exactly. And I think that might be part of what this is the idea of, let's just set some of these gender roles aside, when you're saying, if you're non-binary, if you're just stepping into it, it's like, this doesn't quite fit me. I mean, that's how I feel. I don't feel extra feminine at all, right? But I also definitely, there's times when I do, right? Sometimes you want to be feminine, sometimes you don't want to be feminine. If we could just let all of that go and say, you're not doing being a man correctly, or you're not doing being a woman correctly, so there must be something wrong with you, instead of let's just open it up, man. Let's just open it up. If we get rid of the gender, these concrete gender roles, man, it would just be great. Just roll with it.
And then make the bathroom stall doors go to the floor.
Yes,
people.
exactly.
What is with these American stall doors?
Terrible.
I don't like them. I don't like that people can see my feet, because I have some serious anxieties that people are judging how long my poop is taking. I think that people go to the bathroom in order to police the length of my poop. And look, I want to read the New York Times article on the Australian Open, okay? And it's a longer article than I budgeted for. I've been done for 5 minutes, and I should be allowed to be done for 5 minutes. If you need to use the koala changing station, go to the women's bathroom, okay? Because the handicap stall, because I like to spread out. God.
Get out of the handicap stall. Okay. But along those same lines with the bathroom stall doors and how terrible they are in America, that's part of why you never have the illusion of safety in an American bathroom. You don't feel safe. You feel like first of all, I don't trust that lock is going to stay locked. So you got one foot sort of trying to keep that door closed, right? I feel like somebody's going to come in. I'm in here. You know what I mean? You feel like you're in a very vulnerable position and you don't feel remotely safe. There's a large crack in the door. They can definitely see you. Little kids crawl underneath for some reason, unbothered. You know what I mean? It's unsafe in a bathroom already.
Yep.
That's where we really should legislate longer bathroom doors.
Dorothy says, from a European point of view, I think the USA is going backwards.
So,
well, from an American point of view, your country looks like a little dingleberry on the top of Europe. Okay, so how about that, Denmark? Yeah, you think I don't have friends from Denmark? I do. One is named Jans, and he is pretty cool. But I still shit on his country for looking like a dingleberry. That dude is like 6'10". He was so tall in 6th grade, it was very intimidating, but he had a very cool demeanor and he was accepting of others. And then once we started kicking each other when we were lined up in the hallway, and then Miss Petrovich, the same chick that guilted my parents for parenting, Miss Petrovich told us to stop playing footsie, and we were both so embarrassed. We were so embarrassed, me and Jans. And you know what? Denmark. The USA isn't sliding backwards, okay? Because the USA is the reference frame. It can't slide backwards. Everything else is just getting further away and also forward. I'm scared.
Yeah, it's kind of messed up. We really shouldn't be. We shouldn't be the nexus of how everybody else is doing. Just compare it to America. Are we doing better or worse?
Melting pot. Dude, Florida's new immigration laws, and do you see DeSantis, his approval rating is in the shitter?
Good.
Fuck yeah. Friggin' dork. Yeah, friggin' dork DeSantis. Oh, look at me. I don't need no immigrants in Florida. Why are the fucking vegetation still here?
We were
that's
just
in Florida.
trying to scare you. We just didn't want any new immigrants. We still wanted the ones
We were doing what the government's supposed to do. Frighten its people. Wait, this isn't China? Damn it. This is Tallahassee. I thought it was Tiananmen Square.
I don't know, man.
Geez.
I don't live in Florida, so I just feel like Florida should just lean all the way into just being the hellscape so that we can see what will happen. You know, just let every bad idea let them all happen in Florida so that the rest of us can see. But it seems like
that
everywhere
is absolutely clearly what's already been happening.
Well, it is, but unfortunately, like a lot of these laws are kind of moving along, you know, before we see the ramifications of it in Florida. I feel like nobody should pass any big laws like that for 2 years until we see if it destroys Florida.
Do you know what you sound like, Mom? We talked about this in a previous episode. A conservative. That's the whole conservative philosophy.
I mean,
no.
If it was
the
a real
whole show is us discovering
yes.
that we're conservatives and conservatives are not conservatives.
They are not. They are fascists.
They're not. Well, let's not go crazy.
Oh, okay. They're not fascists. They're fascists?
A lot of them are fascists.
They're oligarchs. No, they're
Russians.
They're Russians. That's the one.
Theocrats.
There you
Theocrats. Yeah. Hey guys, we are so glad that you joined us on this rip roaring episode. Hey, let's see if Sciencey McSciencerson is still here.
Hello.
Nice. Well, good to see you. It was a great episode. We're all super excited to have had you here. Again, remember, your tongue is bigger than it's supposed to be, and it's uncomfortable. It's getting bigger. Oh.
Social contagion. I wanna catch your disease. Social disease. In my genitals. That's where I like my diseases. Yeah!